Okay, so for today's class, the main part is MM. MM in SAP system, we have two main portions. One is inventory management. The other is, for the interface between MM and accounting. It's for material valuation. And also, one more is very important one, procurement. Okay, two main portion would be procurement and inventory management, but interface portion is with accounting. So in today's class, I want to talk about them one by one. So first talk about procurement, then I talk about inventory management, and then interface with accounting. So including the part I emphasized earlier, when I introduce accounting part, I talk about account automatic determination. That means you only work on logistics. Accounting side can be automatically handled by the system. Okay, so I will always cover all these things in today's class. First of all, let's look at procurement. So for procurement, I think if you have a good understanding on sales, you should have a quick understanding on the procurement part as well. Procurement will be very easy because for sales, you are a vendor and you are here. But now, in procurement, you're a customer. That's the only difference. Okay, so look at document flow. At the very beginning, in sales, you have inquiry. Now in procurement, we have requisition. And in sales, you have sales order. But in procurement, we have purchase order. In sales, you have goods issue. Now we have goods receipt. And in sales, you have billing to charge the customer. But now in procurement, you will have the invoice receipt. Okay, in sales, you receive payment. But now in procurement, we pay to vendor. So if you have a good understanding on sales, it's easy. So I don't want to emphasize this process too much. The only thing here is internal demand. Let's leave it there. Okay, we will talk about this next week. It's the integration part between production and procurement. Okay, in production, we will generate internal demand. So in lab 4, when we talk about purchasing, we start from purchase requisition. Okay, we do not have internal demand. In PP part, we will talk about how to have internal demand and how to convert from internal demand to purchase requisition. Okay, so for this process, I want to quickly talk about by showing you the MM exercise 1. So at the very beginning, we create purchase requisition. You can see, step 1 is purchase requisition, right? So we create purchase requisition. Okay, when we create purchase requisition, you just input what material you want to buy. Okay, input material. You request this. Okay, just follow handout. It's very easy. Okay, then, now you want to have 2 raw materials you want to buy. Request. Anyway, then you create the purchase requisition. So during the process, even for a company, same thing. You want to buy anything. We cannot really have purchase order directly. We must first have a requisition. Then it is subject to the manager's approval. Then it will be turned into purchase order, right? So we always start from requisition. It's a request, asking for a conversion from requisition to purchase order. So after we have requisition, now we have purchase order. So 2 things I want to emphasize when we create purchase order. Anyway, now I'm talking about this cycle. I hope you can understand. I just talk about this cycle. Okay, so the first thing I want to emphasize is, again, you see copy function. So in sales, I have already emphasized, if you could copy, you just copy. Do not really start from nothing. Okay, so the same thing in purchasing. Again, we copy. SAP system sometimes was not really consistent. I mean the wording or layout, because the system was developed by different kind of teams. Okay, some teams will use reference. Some team will use copy, but same thing. Okay, so if you see some keywords like copy or reference, the same thing, just copy. Okay, so this time you can copy from requisition. Because in the requisition, we know what we want to buy, right? You can copy into purchase order. That's the first thing you have to understand. And again, in the future, if you could copy, do not type. This is always, the key when you play with ERP system for simplification and reduce the error. Okay. The second thing I want to emphasize is now on page 8 of the lab handout, you copy the requisition into purchase requisition, into purchase order. Now the system knows what materials you want to buy. Okay, then the system will, for each raw material, the system will do some price simulation. It will list all the vendors who can offer you this raw material, and it can provide you the net price and the lead time of this raw material if you buy from a particular vendor. Okay, so this is a kind of simulation. You will be able to decide from which vendor you want to really buy, want to order, depend on the lead time and price. So I have a question I hope you can think of. Think of the process. At the very beginning, based on requisition, we know what we want to buy. But this is only requisition. We don't know the price, right? Only after we reach here, the system lists who can sell you this item and how much you will be charged for each vendor. So my question is, from what kind of data the system can tell you this kind of information about the price? So in the requisition, you only know you want to buy something. You only provided the material number. You never provided the price information, right? Bill of material? It is bill of material or something else. Your logic is right. It is from a master data, right? Bill of material.
Purchasing this, maybe contract.
Contract. Contract is a good one. But suppose we have no contract. What else would be critical? I will talk about contract later. So just now, so far I think we are on the right track. Bill of material, although is not the right answer, it is a kind of master data. Okay? So the right answer is a kind of master data. So master data is something to describe all the resources, right? To relate it to vendor and also your company. So my question here is, specifically which master data? Vendor master. Anybody believes it is vendor master? Yes? Actually, it is not vendor master. Something related to vendor master. So vendor master, if you recall the vendor master data you created in the past, you only put the vendor's shipping contract, shipping terms with you.
Pricing procedure?
I'm sorry?
Pricing procedure? Like the conditions that you set to be associated with the vendor, for example? Is it that?
Something similar. I think you talk about purchasing information record.
Like the pricing procedure, what you set.
To connect two pieces.
RGB,
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah, so
Or we can look at the stocks and requirements list. Because some from the stocks and requirement list is not there, it won't be showing up, and then we can order.
So, specifically, I think you are on the right track, but specifically, this is the one I mentioned just now. Just now, I talked about the purchasing information record. It connects vendor and the material. Remember, I mentioned, for each pair of vendor and the raw material, I have a purchasing information record to connect. Remember? So in the lab 1, you actually created a purchasing information record. In that record, you specify if you buy from a particular vendor, how much money you'll pay. Right? You have this information just based on this. Okay, so it is a master data, and it is used here. Now, let me talk about contract. So we are going to set up contract in today's lab as well. But specifically, the logic in business is when we look for a purchase order price, step 1 is we look at contract. Contract has the highest priority. But in this lab, what we are talking about, we have no contract set up yet. We set up contract in Pro 2. So that means when we reach here, we have no contract. Although in a real business, the system will automatically look for the contract first. Now, if you have no contract, it will go to purchasing information record. That's the second step. Okay, step 3 is if you have no purchasing information record, it will go to material master data. It will look for the material valuation. So I will talk about material valuation later. So 3 steps. Step 1 is ROI contract. Step 2 is purchasing information record. Okay, so for us, we have already created a purchasing information record. So the system identifies the information from it in terms of lead time, in terms of the price information. That makes sense? But we have no contract yet. I will talk about contract later in Pro 2. Okay, so this is the conversion from purchase requisition to purchase order. And we need a kind of new master data. That is the purchasing information record. Okay, then you just save the purchase order. And also here on page 12, we have the condition. Again, in SAP system, as I said, condition just means money, the price calculation. Okay, then one more step I want to emphasize here is goods receipt. Okay, goods receipt is this one. But the thing I want to emphasize is when you do goods receipt, a very important one I want to talk about, just 2 places on page 16. Okay, page 16 is one important place, and also on page 18, 2 places. The thing I want to talk about is, think of this. You only did goods receipt. Okay, you only did goods receipt. But when you did goods receipt, you touched nothing on accounting. You only did logistics. Okay, I received the goods. Save it. But if you go to page 18, you can see accounting has a change. We will have actual asset. Remember in accounting class, I said material A means asset, right? Material increment will bring you increase in asset. So asset increases, AWE increases with debit. That's the accounting rule. Now we do see debit here. So it tells you, actually, although we are working on logistics, the accounting has been automatically maintained. So this is a good way for us to simplify our work. This is accounting feature in SAP system. Account automatic determination and posting. We just manage it automatically. Okay, this is the first one I want to emphasize. It's a good feature. Now, the second thing I want to emphasize is on page 16. It is stock overview. Okay, stock overview is very, very important. Last week, when we discussed the sales, I introduced the stock requirement list. Okay, I hope you could still remember. Stock requirement list shows you stock information and requirement information. And stock would be the current stock and the future stock. We cover up this stock requirement list. Now, with stock requirement list, it's not sufficient. We have several cases for you to understand. For a real business, we have quite a few different kind of stock. From this figure on page 16, you can see the stock includes unrestricted use stock, unrestricted use, and also stock under quality inspection, and also stock under being reserved, and much more. So stock has many types, but stock requirement list you learned in last week. This stock requirement list cannot differentiate the different types of stock. Okay, maybe sometimes, for example, you do have 1,000 PCs on hand, but the system tells you you have nothing to serve a particular customer. In this case, stock requirement list cannot tell you anything in details. It only tells you have 1,000 PCs on hand, but you don't know the status of the stock. Maybe all these 1,000 pieces, they belong to reserved or belong to quality inspection. You cannot use them. That makes sense? So stock will have many types. The type can be identified by stock overview. So if you run stock overview, you can not only see how much you have. In addition, you can see the type, the status of the stock. In many cases, when you do goods receipt, automatically you will put them into quality inspection. Quality inspection stock cannot be used immediately. Okay, only unrestricted use stock can be used. That makes sense? So this is logic, and this is the reporting function you should know. When you work on the project, when you work on the exam, you should look at this. So in the future, I will show you, just like in today's class, later I will show you. You might want to do stock transfer. You want to move some stock from location A to location B. Okay, then in this case, you do have 1,000 pieces on hand, but maybe it is in location B. Now, if you want to issue goods from location A, you have nothing, right? Because it is located in location B. Then in this case, stock requirement list cannot have anything. It only knows the total amount. No status, no location specific information. But for details, you have to go to stock overview. Then you can see detailed information. Can you follow me? So usually you should use both reporting function. Stock requirement list is good for you to match up with your supply and demand. Then stock overview is mainly for you to identify the status of your inventory. Two different purposes. Okay, so this is the purchasing lab, and it is part 1. After we do goods receipt, the next two steps, step 1 is invoice, vendor invoice. Then we pay to vendor. Vendor invoice and vendor payment have already been covered in accounting lab, so I don't want to repeat. Very easy. Any question? Okay, so that's the purchasing cycle. So I think so far I give you some general understanding about the purchasing process. So the next one is very important, about goods movement. Okay, I really hope if you can have a good understanding about goods movement and accounting interface, I will say, in the future, if you go to a business, you could have a very good understanding about the logistic part, goods movement, and the accounting interface. So for goods movement, this is something I want to emphasize. In practice, think of this. In summary, as I mentioned here, we have 3 types of goods movement. Issue goods out. You have something in, or you do internal transfer. Only 3 categories, right? So when you issue goods out, you have specific transaction. Maybe you issue goods out to customer. Maybe you issue goods out to vendor. You want to have a return. Or maybe you issue goods out to another company code. Like you want to issue goods out from New Brunswick to Newark. You do goods issue. Or maybe you want to do an internal transfer. In this case, it's a stock transfer, not really issue goods out. But if you want to issue goods out to trash bin, it's goods issue. In other words, you want to dispose the goods. That's goods issue. Okay? Then under goods receipt category, you may want to receive goods from vendor, or receive a return from customer, or receive goods from quality inspection. Quite a few goods receipt. And then stock transfer. You may want to move the goods from location A to B within your plant. We have many categories. Within one category, we have many specific purposes. So what I want to talk about regarding goods movement, this is the key, movement type. Okay, movement type is the unique feature in SAP system. So I will say, most other ERP system, like Microsoft ERP, they don't have movement type. So I want to slightly explain the meaning of movement type. So let's look at the system. I want to quickly show you. Suppose I want to do a stock transfer. Suppose inventory management, goods movement, and I want to do a transfer posting. Okay. Now, if I want to do transfer posting, one field is movement type. Okay. Now, definitely at this moment, I have not explained movement type yet. Nobody can have a good understanding about movement type. And let's just take a look. Right? We can take a look at help to see what option we have. Okay, so we just take a look. You can see this transaction is for transfer. Okay, then movement type. It tells you transfer posting from one plant to the other, and the reversal. And then transfer posting, let me show some other example, maybe better for you to understand. Transfer posting, transfer from quality inspection to unrestricted use. Okay, different kind of transfer purpose. So from this example now, although you still have some concern about the meaning of movement type, but you can see, in short, the whole list here offers you all potential reasons for you to transfer. Can you see that? So in short, movement type, we use 3 digits to represent. So for example, 312 means this reason. Okay, and then 301 means transfer from one plant to the other. Okay, SAP system does not understand the detailed explanation. It only understands the code. So you don't understand code, but you can take a look at list and choose based on the English explanation. Right? So 301 just means transfer from one plant to the other. That is movement type, 301. And if you want to have some other transfer, you look for the remaining list and find out another 3-digit combination. Okay, so in short, movement type tells you the reason for you to do goods movement. Okay, that's movement type. Now, specifically, let me explain why we need a movement type. It's very important. Recall I introduced account automatic determination. So account automatic determination, the main logic is you do something logistics, but accounting can be automatically controlled by the system. Okay, that's the main logic. However, if you have no movement type, that means you have no specific reason about why you move the goods. Then in this case, you only have 3 general categories: goods issue, goods receipt, stock transfer. Then how can the system understand your main purpose for you to do goods movement? How can the system manage accounting side? One particular example. If you do goods issue, simply telling the system, I want to do goods issue, will not be helpful for the system understand which account it should maintain. Because if you want to do goods issue to vendor, or if you want to issue goods to customer, the related accounting transaction will be different. Think of this. A simple goods issue to vendor, that means your liability will decrease and your asset will decrease, right? So your liability account and your asset account will be impacted. But if you want to do a goods issue to customer, then your cost of goods sold will increase and then your asset will go down. So from this example, you can see depends on what kind of transaction, the reason you want to do. We have different accounting transactions involved. That makes sense? Think of my example again. If you only tell system, I want to do goods issue, how can the system know which account it should maintain? You have to tell the system, I want to do goods issue. The reason is I want to issue goods to vendor, or I want to issue goods to customer. Then the system can know which account it should maintain. So goods movement, the key is movement type. Movement type offers detailed explanation, the reason. Meanwhile, it can advise the accounting side which account you should maintain automatically. Without movement type, the system will not be able to maintain the accounts. That makes sense? So just now I used one example, goods issue. The same thing if you do goods receipt. If you receive the goods from customer as a return, then your revenue will decrease and your assets will increase. But if you receive a goods from vendor, your liability will increase and your assets will increase. So the accounting side will be different. That's why SAP designed the movement type to break down different kind of category. As I said, we only have 3 categories: goods issue, goods receipt, and stock transfer. But within each category, we have many, many reasons. We have to tell the system. So the reason is used for 2 purposes. The first purpose is we want to have a record why we want to do this goods movement. The second purpose is we want to offer accounting some guidance, which account you should maintain automatically. Without movement type, account automatic determination is impossible. That makes sense now? So think of my example just now. Okay, so this is the first part on inventory management I want to explain to you. You will have to tell the system, number 1, the category, issue or receipt or transfer. Step 2, you have to tell the system the movement type. In other words, the specific purpose why you want to move the goods. Then the system will have a record and it can also guide accounting to maintain the accounts automatically. So this is the goods movement. Okay, and here, for example, I give you some example here in accounting. In MM Lab 2. Lab 3. Let's go to MM Lab 3. So you do goods issue. Okay, if you follow handout, you do goods issue, you have to specify movement type. Because goods issue only, as I said, to vendor, to customer. So what? I don't know which account I should maintain. Okay, so in this example, I specify movement type 201. If you look at the system, you will see 201 movement type means consumption for cost central. So one example, just like supply chain cost central. I need a toner for the printer, the cartridge. So in this case, I do a goods issue from the warehouse to supply chain cost central, right? So I have consumption. Then in this case, the accounting side is we have a decrease of the asset. The asset will be impacted, and we have the expense. We use the material. Okay, so this kind of goods issue is different from 2 examples I mentioned just now. So it can further demonstrate it is really necessary for us to provide movement type for a system to manage accounting side. Okay, so you provide 201. You want to issue goods to a cost central. So then you follow handout and you finish. After that, you can see your inventory level goes down because you finished the goods issue out. Okay, this is stock overview I mentioned just now. I introduced. So on page 4, you can see your inventory stock decreases. Meanwhile, the thing I want to emphasize is if you follow accounting, in the accounting lab, when we want to look at cost central's transaction, this time we issue goods out to cost central P010, right? So we only simply did goods issue in logistics. But on page 5 and page 6, if you want to look at the cost central P010, you will see we have cost, raw material consumption, we issue goods. So accounting can be maintained automatically. Remember just now we issued the goods. We only did it in logistics. We never touched accounting. But just because of this movement type, 201, the system understands we need to maintain accounting. And this time, it is not for a customer return. It is not for a vendor return. You return to vendor, or it is not issued to customer, but you want to issue something to cost central. So you have expense, right? And this time the expense is here, maintained in the accounting automatically. Okay, 720,000. You have a material consumption. Any questions so far? Okay, then one more example I want to show you, transfer posting. Also here, if you want to do transfer posting, you need to specify a movement type. Okay, but before we really do a transfer posting, so think of the logic. Although we don't want to see this happen, just a maybe not good example. Suppose you do not want to stay in business school. You want to transfer to engineering school, suppose. Then it is a kind of transfer, right? Then in this case, think of the logic. All your current records are with business school. You want to transfer your records to engineering school. Then what you should do as step one is move all your records to engineering school before you can transfer, right? So the destination must know you. Then you can transfer. Okay? So what we do is very simple. If at Rutgers you want to transfer, we simply copy your record in business school to engineering school. Then you will have a record there. Then you can transfer. Okay, so now here, material transfer, we follow same logic. If you want to transfer from one location to the other, before you can transfer, then destination must know this material. Okay, so what we should do is we create this material again. Okay, create this material, but copy from itself. Just like you copy yourself from business school record to engineering school record. So what we do here is we copy from our current existing record to the new destination. Okay, so what we do is you can see you create a material, but copy from itself. That's the logic. Because we copy the existing information to a new destination. That makes sense? Then it is on page 7. Then on page 8, you can see you tell the system you want to copy to start location 200. That's the place you want to transfer. You have to first copy. Make sure location 200 can recognize this raw material. Then you copy to. Okay, so you follow handout, and eventually you will see on page 9, the material already exists and will be extended. Just like if you want to transfer to engineering school, your record is available in our Rutgers system, but extended to engineering school location. Okay, so after this extension, then you can do a movement, transfer. This time transfer 411. 411 is transfer from one location to the other. Then you can transfer. Okay, so after transfer, if you look at stock requirement, stock overview on page 11, you can see location 100, you have the remaining raw materials, but in location 200, you have 100 pieces. That's the stock transfer. So anyway, in summary, whatever we are doing is we want to do some kind of goods movement, issue or receipt or transfer, but we have to specify movement type. Without it, the system has no record. The system will not be able to manage accounting side. Okay, remember the goods issue. Goods issue could be to customer, could be to vendor, could be to a cost center. We have different accounting transactions. So in order to simplify your work, you have to tell the system why you want to do this goods issue. Then the system can manage the accounting side for you automatically. So from here, you can see the interface between logistics and accounting a bit. Actually, this interface is established by movement type. In logistics, you always have the material movement, but each movement is identified by a movement type. So SAP summarizes all the potential movement type using 3-digit code. And then accounting side can be handled. This is the logic. They spend much time on this. Any question? It's hard or easy? Okay, so let's talk about one more thing before we take a break. The next one, reservation. So just now I quickly showed you in the stock overview, we have several types of the stock. In the stock overview, MN Lab 3, for example, page 11, we have unrestricted use stock, quality inspection stock, and under reservation. So reservation is very common in practice. What we want to do with reservation is, for example, I have a very important customer. I want to make sure my production for this customer is on time. In this case, I want to reserve my raw materials just for the production for this particular customer. So this is reservation. And another example is if you want to buy something from Best Buy, but you cannot go to Best Buy right now. You will be able to call them. You tell them, I want this kind of laptop, but I cannot come right now. Then maybe Best Buy will say, okay, just come by tomorrow. No later than tomorrow noon, they will hold for you. And they will not really sell this laptop to anybody else. That's also an example of reservation. Okay, reservation is very popular, very common in practice, especially in production. In production, in order to make sure the production can run smoothly, we always reserve some raw materials to make sure. Otherwise, we schedule production, but no raw material. This does not make sense. So when we are doing the production scheduling in the future, I will show you this. When we are doing production scheduling, we always reserve raw materials accordingly. Otherwise, the schedule is not valid. Right? Okay, so this example can help you better understand reservation. And specifically, reservation will tell you, first of all, what material you want to reserve. Second, what goods movement you want to take. Maybe reserve material for production. Maybe reserve material to issue to customer. Different kind of purposes. Okay? Number 3, from what time to what time you want to reserve this material. Right? So several key information. These are on reservation. So specifically, if you look at my slides, retention period is quite important for reservation. It tells the system how long you want to reserve for customer. Okay, but one thing I want to explain is, if you look at MM Lab 3, page 13 or 14, 13, yeah. This part is a setup for reservation. Okay, and here you have retention period 30. The time unit is day, 30 days. And then days movement allowed, 30. Also time unit is day. So I want to slightly explain the meaning of days goods movement allowed and the retention period. So every time if you want to create a reservation, you always have a base day. Okay, so specifically, let's look at my explanation here. The base day is in the middle. All right? And then after base day, we have a time horizon. This is retention period after base day. So in other words, base day is your anticipation about what time you will be able to go and pick up. Okay, this is the expected value. But retention period is the duration after base day. And then we have the duration before the base day. This is days movement allowed. So in my screen here, the red part is the days movement allowed. And the blue part is retention period. So this is referring to the screen here. I have two fields, days movement allowed and the retention period. Okay, so one is the portion before base day. The other is the portion after base day. That makes sense? So sometimes, it's very common. You have an important customer. Okay, this customer needs something in 6 months, but our production will only take 5 days. It does not make sense for us to reserve something right now, right? So he will need something in 5 months. I only spend 5 days for the production. So usually I will have a reservation maybe at most 10 days. That's all. I can reserve raw material to make sure I can work for him, right? So the due date is far away from today. Why do I have to worry about the reservation for today? So that's why sometimes for a business, the logic is here. If the due date is far away from today, okay, maybe today is somewhere here, then we don't have to worry about reservation until this time, until here. Then we set up the reservation. We reserve the raw materials. That makes sense? Before that, we feel free to use our goods, our raw materials. Can you follow me? So this is a very common logic. The days movement allowed and the retention period, one is before, one is after, just to, consider your business need. And if it's very normal, your customers always order many, many days in advance. Then in this case, you don't have to worry about the reservation today. So in this case, you don't want to create any reservation to hold any material for today. Okay, that is the logic. But if your production lead time is very long, then you might want to have a long window for retention period and days movement allowed. It really depends on the business feature, the due date, and the lead time. All right? So this is the reservation, and I introduced the retention period and days movement allowed. So you can see in the lab handout, what you will do is you create a reservation, base day, the anticipated time you want to pick up the goods. Okay, you put the time. And then movement type. In other words, what you want to do. Okay, the reservation is for this kind of goods movement, 311 movement type. It's for stock transfer. Okay, and then you follow handout, you reserve the material. This is the material you want to do the goods movement for this movement type. Okay, then you save this reservation. Then if you really want to use this reservation, you pick. Just like as a customer, you first call Best Buy, you want to reserve. Then if you really want to pick up the goods, you just go there and pick up. Then they will say you pick a reservation. In production, it's also very common. You first reserve raw materials. Then you pick raw materials specifically for a production order. Okay, so then this reservation will be effective. But if you do not pick reservation, by the end of retention period, the reservation will be gone. And the goods will be released to the customers, to the other customers. Okay, so this is reservation, and by talking about reservation, I think I also talk about movement type. You need to understand technically in logistics, every goods movement can be described by movement type. So reservation is for you to reserve some materials for a certain purpose. The purpose is described by movement type. Okay, movement type is just for logistics, but it can also control accounting because it tells the system the purpose, the reason. Then we can know accounting, which accounts are involved. Okay, so far, I introduced the purchasing. I showed you Lab 1. I also talk about goods movement type, and reservation. Then I talk about the reservation, the Lab 3 as well. Okay, so let's take a break. Then I will talk about the remaining part after class.